guys. Today's video is all about the connection between gut health, autoimmune diseases, and nervous system dysregulation. If you're new here, my name is Raelan, and this channel is all about exploring different ME/CFS and long COVID recovery approaches, sharing empowering stories, and spreading a message of hope. Today, I'm super excited to have Natalie Earle, a certified functional nutritional therapy practitioner, join us from Portland, Oregon. She's here to talk about her personal recovery journey from chronic fatigue and other debilitating symptoms, as well as share her insights and wealth of knowledge from her professional experience helping others to recover as well. So let's welcome Natalie. Natalie, so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, Raelan. It's just a pleasure to be here.
So you have a ton of professional experience and knowledge on all of these topics, health and healing, but it would be really great to hear about your personal experience that got you on this journey. So how did this all start for you?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely landed into the health and wellness field because of my own healing journey. And I like to encourage everybody that I meet and talk to about this, that a lot of it is a lifelong journey in some ways. So for me, it really started in childhood. When I think back to some of the symptoms that I presented with in college, when I was really hitting my rock bottom, I attributed a lot of my mood disorder symptoms like anxiety and depression to PTSD. And I experienced childhood trauma. And I say that I always bring this up because it's a big piece to the bigger story of health and wellness. And for me, the way I think of it is really getting back to yourself and coming back to loving yourself. So that's where it started for me. And I also surprisingly had lots of gut microbiome symptoms as a kid that I didn't acknowledge as a kid, right? So I had constipation, I had chronic yeast infections at an early age. I started to get when I started my period in high school, I started having really intense PMS cramps and it was debilitating. So in college, when my health really hit rock bottom, I do attribute it to a certain, I don't know if I can say it, but like a certain vaccine, the HPV vaccine, really, I think tipped me more over the edge. You might have to cut that out, but yeah. But I do.
That's happened. That's what happened.
Yeah. It really. Looking back to, I didn't know it at the time, but a lot of my immune system crashed in college. I started getting chronic bronchitis, chronic UTI infections, chronic cystic acne, and then the fatigue really set in alongside food sensitivities. So throughout college, I was just lost. I was really caring a lot about the environment. So I was vegetarian for certain reasons of just wanting to be good to the environment. But then I had food sensitivities to things like dairy and eggs. So I ultimately just ended up being vegan for several years, which further depleted me, I believe. And I really think that I could have done things differently along this journey to have supported me and not crash so hard. I don't know how I got through college. I studied physics in college, and I remember very distinctly my junior year, I had a very big candida flare of like oral thrush, and it just kept coming back, and my brain just stopped working, and I had to work 10 times harder. I was losing sleep. It was a really hot mess. It wasn't until after college that I finally found a nutritionist and discovered really Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride's work with the gut and psychology syndrome. I read her book, and it really just explained my whole life to me. I'm definitely a gapster type person from like birth, right? And if you know if, anyone knows about her story and her work, that we get our microbiomes from our mothers and then from their mothers. And so this definitely is a lifelong kind of gut dysbiosis situation, creating a lot of toxicity in my body. So I have different sections of my healing journey. I feel like it's a long one, like many with chronic fatigue, but I didn't actually acknowledge the chronic fatigue. I just thought it was normal. Like I never pursued any kind of testing. I was very fed up with, I didn't think I could be helped by the Western medical world. And my mom definitely helped inspire me to look towards more alternative options from the get-go. And so I improved so much with just implementing more animal-based foods and the gut healing principles of the GAPS diet. And then I kind of plateaued and I had realized the toxicity piece. So I had a mercury filling, or actually 2 mercury fillings. So I ended up pursuing getting those removed. Little did I know, I'm like the type of person to just go all in, maybe a little more rash, but I'm cautious at times. But when it came to just, I needed to get things done, I was always afraid that I wouldn't have the energy to do it. So I just would go for it. So I got the mercury removed, fillings removed, and my health just crashed afterwards again, with the fatigue and detoxification that my body went through. But I'm really grateful for that experience too, because it helped me dive more deeper into mitochondrial health. I found Mary Ruddick, who mentored me for 2.5 years. And what really started to piece together for me was the lactic acid imbalances, the B1 deficiency. I had a C. diff infection in my gut from a stool test, which further just supported my hunches of mitochondrial imbalances. I started to realize I was over consuming oxalates on the GAPS diet, which is a common thing for some people. Not everybody needs to be worried, I don't think, about oxalates, but I think everyone should know about them. So I talk about them because it was a big piece for me, especially with the chronic UTIs and things. So I found the ketogenic diet, and it felt like I finally got my brain back. And it's been several years since then. And I just love the ketogenic approach for people with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, all kinds of neurological symptoms and conditions. Autoimmunity is definitely something that I relate to and never was diagnosed with. But I know for a fact that in my family history, neuroendocrine and neuroendocrine immunological connections are there. So my mother was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and my aunt and my grandma. So there's a big connection for me that I realized the nervous system is so important as like a ground and a foundation of not only digestion and the gut health, but they're so interconnected. You can't ignore one. So that's my story, a bit of it anyways.
I think it's really great that you brought up a lot of this stuff, because there's a lot of focus lately on the brain, the autonomic nervous system, which is obviously really important, and you're acknowledging that as well. But our gut, we refer to it as our second brain, and it is massively impactful in the functioning of our body and is connected to our brain. There's a two-way communication going on there, and it's fascinating the more I learn about the gut. And even with my own health journey, I put a lot of focus into gut health, and it got me tremendous results. So does everyone have, gut dysbiosis, that problematic mix of bacteria and viruses and so forth? But potentially not. But I think it's a really important conversation to have, because a lot of people do, and addressing it can go a really long way.
Yeah. I definitely a little bit nerdy, and I've pieced together, there is some hunches, I guess it's still a theory, but that the mitochondria evolved from a certain type of bacteria. And so I really do think that we live more in a bacteria world than the way we think of it, that we, humans think that we run the world, but I I definitely think that we're more at a whim to the bacteria that are amongst us. And so, yeah, yes, there are some people who probably don't have to tweak their diet quite as much to get the bacterial shifting. And that was early on in my career as a nutritionist. That was always my big question, is how can I know when to put what diet, for which person, right? And I think that I've figured out that there's a lot of specific symptoms and signs that the body is telling us, like, definitely we need to do microbiome. And some of those things are like the early onset of maybe yeast infections or allergies. If you've had a lot of antibiotics, and a lot of the clients that come to me, they've had like 40 rounds of antibiotics in their lifetime. I'm like, you definitely need to focus on that. But yeah, not everybody does. Say some people get just an infection abroad, and they've never had, they do one parasitic and they feel better, but they still, like, they nip the gut issue in, right away with that, but maybe they still are struggling with fatigue. They might not have that big of a gut microbiome issue, because I do think that antiparasitic medications can be a little gentler on the gut, and maybe we don't even address parasites enough in the modern world. So yeah, those are some ideas that I think about, and maybe would be helpful to, like, for some people to know, wait, do I really need to address the microbiome or not? And then there's also confusion about how to do that. And I think it varies for different people. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. A good combination of listening to your body and looking at your symptoms and looking at your history. Addressing my microbiome went a long way, but I had been living in Southeast Asia for a long time, and I was given antibiotics for virtually everything. Yeah. And I had recurring, UTIs and yeast infections, and I had digestive issues and bloating and constipation, and just like the signs were all over the place. I had parasite infections, just the whole works.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's a good point. Just it's not everybody, but there are signs or things to point you towards thinking, okay, this might be worth me spending some time on.
Yeah. Was that at the very beginning of your journey?
No, I was already sick by this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was compounded things. Although I'm not sure I left Canada with great gut health either. It just got... Mm-hmm. So even when I lived in Canada, when you're talking about who's really ruling the world, we have more bacteria in our body than we are us, right? Like there's more than there is Raelan here. Mm-hmm. And I came to understand what I had been going through. Like I was a puppet and they had all the strings, because I had such intense sugar cravings that were bigger than me. Like I every waking moment pretty much was spent trying not to eat sugar. I would get up in the middle of the night, every single night, and sometimes just grab a spoonful of straight sugar and then get back to bed. So I just thought I had weak willpower. I thought I was just a problematic human. I liked sugar too much, but what you feed grows. So all of these things in our body, they can impact our behavior, which seems crazy that these microscopic organisms got me out of bed in the middle of the night to eat sugar, but they absolutely did. Yeah. And I think it's a really important thing to remember, because most of us internalize it like it's some sort of weakness or there's something wrong with us. Mm-hmm. Why can't we just be stronger like the people around us who don't have these food issues? So it is a really important thing to address and to understand, for sure.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think you had said that the gut is the second brain, and I like to think of it more as the first brain because of the way that our bodies have evolved. Like our gut evolved first before our brain, like for Homo sapiens, like for our brain to develop in the size that it has. So I do obviously there's a lot of control. Without our brain, we wouldn't have gut function. So it's hard to say which is first, right? But I because of my focus on gut microbiome a lot, like you're saying, it controls so much of us. And that helped me when I learned that. It helped me feel so much grace towards myself and less, beating myself up and the willpower issue. You're like, oh man, I can't stick with anything that I really want to. And if I externalize it and I'm like, this isn't me, it gives me power over it, actually. So by allowing myself to actually get more information about, wait, these gut bugs really do control a big piece of me, help me get to a little bit more power over them. And I didn't have to listen to them as much anymore. I could just acknowledge, like, that's not me. And I, started to chip away at like changing those behaviors. Yeah, that was a big one for me too.
In your experience with your own health journey and with the people that you now work with, how critical is addressing diet in all of this? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. It varies for different people, I think, but I would say it's definitely 50%, if not more, of the importance, especially because of what I know about ketogenic diets too. If we are not able to, for most of our life, if we are not able to get into ketosis just because we live in this abundance of calorie-rich foods, but nutrient-less foods, we are never giving our cells really a breath of fresh air. And that's what the ketogenic state does for our body. And so I think everybody, if you have chronic fatigue syndrome, especially, or any kind of neurological condition, I think everyone should go through a period, maybe 3 to 6 months of doing a ketogenic therapeutic diet, even if it doesn't feel good. And that's really, maybe you work towards it. Like maybe you don't just go from a standard American diet to keto, but working towards it like the way I did with cutting out processed foods first. And then slowly after years deciding like, I'm still eating too much. I was low carb for a long time, but it was still like 100 grams of carbs per day. And so once I finally reset my mitochondria by getting into ketosis, I actually felt amazing within a month or so, like getting through the keto flu. It's much more drastic for somebody with mitochondrial imbalances and so much inflammation, but it is such a very important tool to lower inflammation, even if you don't do ketogenic, right? But yeah, I try to challenge people to like give it a try at some point, and I'll help them with it. And I do think it pushes the needle to accelerate the healing process. And, sometimes we can't accelerate the healing journey to our own, we can't control it, right? Like there's not a lot of control, but there are some things we can control, and it's allowing our bodies the space, and the space to heal, right? Like creating the conditions and the environment for our bodies to heal. We can't really push the time frame in the way that we really want to control it, because if we could, we'd just be healed like tomorrow, right? It's a journey. So I think it's very important, but I do tell a lot of my clients, even if you're doing 100% correct on the diet, and I know so many people who do this and they come to me and their nervous system they're just frantic, they're desperate, and they're coming from this desperate, like life-saving approach. And I actually wanted to talk to you about this, Raelan, because I've done lots of therapy in my life. And it wasn't until I actually started to do a combination of limbic work, visualization practices, breath work, and then internal family systems therapy that I was able to really tune in more to kind of like all the different parts that are getting in the driver's seat and like hijacking me to get me well, right? So I discovered I had this wellness part that was like, I'll do anything. You just like, I'm going to read about all the things, and just, it's that desperate energy that kind of got me into this, this field, and it got me in the right direction. And I appreciate that part, and it's very valuable. But I realized that if it was running the show all the time, I'd never had a time to rest or really just be and experience other parts of life, right? And it almost felt like it trapped me in this wellness kind of there's no way out of the wellness journey. And now I don't have that, because I can acknowledge that this wellness part is helpful, but it's sometimes the ways and methods that I am going about the healing journey is it's not going to get me to the end results that I want. So I kind of have to like navigate that. So yeah, for you, I remember hearing one of your talks, and you mentioned that you took a break for a while after you got to a certain point and then got back into it. And it just reminded me of my own experience with that, with like the desperate energy versus just being calm and confident that this is going to happen, and still motivated to do all the things, right? So how do we be motivated without the desperation?
Yeah, those first couple of years, it's amazing. I saw any improvement at all. And it wasn't massive, but it was driven by pure desperation and just in a stressed out, completely focused place of just trying to get better, and severe depression and overwhelm and fear, which is understandable. It's,
Totally.
kind of how we all end up. And then I just let go. And it's not like I recovered, but I actually did start getting a little bit better. I plateaued again, but I probably saw as much progress, if not more, just from letting go and trying to be happy and trying to live life a little bit and find joy again, as I did from the thousands of dollars of supplements. I actually don't think those did anything, but in all the other intense, drills I did every day of things trying to get myself better.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that's a big piece of it too. So that's why I'm like, okay, 50-50, like we have to go into this with the right mindset and the right self-love. And it's not going to be perfect all the time. Like you said, like it's kind of like a grieving journey of, you're going to have these emotions at first, and like desperation and trying to heal out of the maybe fear of like what worse, how much worse could this get? But yeah, 50-50, like diet, you cannot, it's maybe because I'm a nutritionist, that's just how I see the world, but we are built of everything that we eat. And I think we can always do our best with the diet until we can do better. And maybe that we're dependent on some of the psychological and emotional healing to get to doing better with our diet. And it goes back and forth at times.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to pay attention to it, and it's very important. But also come at it with a place of that flexibility a little bit. Like I like a lot of people take on diet in the same way they take on everything else, and it just becomes this stressful thing that they're trying to get perfect, and nobody gets it perfect. It's just it's doing what you can and experimenting, and just at the end of the day saying it was enough.
Yeah. One thing, I want to tell this story. I just realized that it might not be everybody's experience with this, but I run a support group with some of my clients, and one of them expressed that, the first year was one of the most difficult. It was kind of that experience that we're talking about, like very desperate and like lots of mood imbalances, and just like feeling like there's a struggle with the diet. There was just so much struggle, like trying to do this, not wanting to do it really, but feeling forced to do it in a way, like there's no choice in the matter. And I think it's really important for us to feel like we have a choice, and we might not feel that way internally for some reasons, but I think it also is a physiological imbalance or nutritional imbalance, because after a year, she just said like all of a sudden she had this calmness and this security and like peace all of a sudden. And she was sharing that with the other people in the group, which was just one of the benefits, I think, of having other people you can talk to a little bit about like your struggles and who are doing similar things as you, but within reason, because we can end up spiraling down like a negative conversation. But, sharing our wins and encouraging one another. And it was so encouraging to so many other people because they were in that at the beginning of it. And that's what I love about these videos, because it's like seeing people throughout or at the end and seeing what's possible. But yeah, I definitely feel that sometimes it's physical, that the challenges people are having with the diet is the microbiome. Telling like kind of we're fighting against the microbiome all this time, and it makes it hard, especially in our modern world where we're so much bombarded by the opposite, right? Like it's like floating in our face is like to eat the sugar and the things that are going to feed our opportunistic bacteria. But yeah, that's it's not always physical, but I think that's a big piece to it.
Okay, so in addition to some of these things you've talked about, like nervous system regulation and gut microbiome and diet and all of that, have there been any other big things for you personally or with your clients that really help them to get their health and things back on track?
Yeah. The first thing when I started learning about the mitochondria and how the lactic acid energy cycle is our secondary kind of energy cycle for carb burning and glucose burning. And when our carb burning energy cycle of ATP gets kind of bogged down, or we don't have the right nutrients to help that work properly, we can end up with too much lactic acid buildup. And that's like, we just ran a marathon and our whole body is just debilitated. It's just frozen and achy and in pain, and potentially even just like fatigued. Like so much of that post exercise malaise is just lactic acid buildup all over your body. And I had dealt with that for several years, and I didn't even know what it was until I learned from Mary Ruddick and her experience. So the biggest thing that was helpful for me with that was getting into that ketogenic state to help with shifting the energy cycle, giving my cells a break from burning glucose. And then that helped with replenishing some of the nutrients that are required for glucose burning, like the benfotiamine thiamine, which is the first B1 vitamin. And one of the protocols I use a lot for my clients and that I used to help me with energy was a high dose thiamine protocol. So that was a big piece, as well as really, I think it was around this similar actually to like COVID time, where I actually started to learn more about or get serious about circadian rhythm and starting the day with getting sunlight. I started to connect in my life that all the times that I felt a little bit more energy was when I was actually outside the most. So I've always been very outdoorsy, and I did push myself to do big adventures, right? Like backpacking and things, and biking as a mode of transportation. So what that really did for me was, first thing in the morning, I would be commuting, and instead of being in a vehicle, I was out exposed to the sunlight and all of the different UV rays. And that, I think, really helped me stay stabilized for as long as possible. So yeah, circadian rhythm and B1 are, as well as some minerals. I think the forefront of nutrient, kind of nutrition studies and research, I hope, goes towards probiotics and mineral balance. I'm really fascinated about those two things and helping people with getting enough of these, because our soils are depleted, our bodies are depleted. There's so much connection between the health of our soils and our whole world and the health of our bodies. I think we're just kind of mirroring what's happening in the earth right now. And so, yeah, building nutrient stores through mineral balance, and then getting that through either, minor supplementation, but mostly from fermented foods, from like fulvic minerals, and even things like herbs and things like that have silica in it, and those kinds of things. I like to use those a lot for just mostly the detoxification processes. So yeah, those are the key takeaways in my practice so far.
And that definitely all resonates with my own experience and what other people have told me. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Good.
So what do you have available for people who are, because you work with a lot of people now who are facing various health conditions. So what do you do? What do you have available? Where can people find that?
Yes. So I work one-on-one with clients right now. I really love working one-on-one. So yeah, you can, if you are interested in getting to know me more, you can go to my website. I have lots of articles that I write, and I definitely get on my email list because I send out a newsletter twice a month. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm always trying to educate and post about these things that I'm using in my practice and education that I really believe is lost ancestral nutrition knowledge that we all are missing, and everyone should know, these things. And especially when it comes to like processing of foods, because I think that would protect us a lot from, like in my own experience being vegetarian or vegan for a long time, I wish I had known like proper ways to cook certain plants, because it would have helped me from oxalate toxicity and things like that. So my offerings right now are just one-on-one and different packages that you can work with me. I also have a small mentorship program for anyone who's a nutritionist and wants to learn more about the different diets that are therapeutic, right? Like the low oxalate diet and how to really do like a ketogenic diet and things like that.
Incredible. And as always, people watching, this is all in the video description. So I really encourage you to expand that and just take a moment to click on some of the things that are there, because she not only puts out such great information, and so much of it is free and just really super helpful stuff. So it's all there. Definitely take a look. And you've mentioned too a couple times Mary Reddick, who I love. I think she's incredible. And she's been on the channel a couple of times. So I can link up here at the end of this video her latest interview, because she shares really amazing stuff and just this incredible work traveling the world, studying different tribes and ancestral diets and that relationship to health. And she's really just a wealth of knowledge. So I'll link that for you as well. Natalie, I'm so excited that you and I have met. Thank you for taking the time to do this today. I'm so glad you had such a rough journey with your health. Your university years sound like a nightmare. But I'm so glad you are where you are now. And now you're here helping so many people in the world. So just thank you. Thank you for being you and for doing this today and for all that you're doing. I think it's incredible.
Thank you, Raelan. I really appreciate this opportunity to share my story.
And thank you to those of you watching. As always, looking forward to your comments. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a ton out of it like I did. And I hope to see you in this next one with Mary Reddick.